Week Roundup. As the Moria refugee camp prepares for its third winter, it remains the biggest stain on the European Union. The EU has allocated €561 million for the camps on Lesbos, Chios and Samos. But for every €5 the Commission has set aside, it's alleged that less than 1.5 has reached its target. The result is what the General Secretary of Amnesty International, Kumi Naidoo, this week called a humanitarian disaster that, even by the standards of refugee camps, was shocking. On a visit to the Moria camp, Naidoo claimed the EU was complicit in the crisis by channelling funds to the Greek government instead of experienced NGOs. Government ministers from around the world gathered in London last week to tackle the growing menace of corruption in top-level sport. Joining them were delegates from the sports world and experts in corruption, including members of the Olympics and Commonwealth Games organisations, as well as the OECD and the Council of Europe. In this week's news at EUAC, new resolutions targeting the rule of law and the free press in Eastern Europe have been adopted in the EU Parliament. For Serbia, the EU is calling for improvements on general corruption and particularly reforms to public administration to improve neutrality. Furthermore, there are calls for closer alignment on foreign policy vis-à-vis Russia. Lastly, the EU wants movement from Belgrade on recognition of the Srebrenica genocide, a fundamental step on Serbia's path to joining the EU. MEPs praised Macedonia for its progress with Greece concerning its name. However, substantial concerns remain on issues of money laundering and judicial independence. After its recent skirmish with Russia, the Ukraine has now been awarded €500 million from the EU Commission as part of the Macro-Financial Assistance (MFA) programme. It's now received €3.3 billion since 2014. The EU believes Ukraine has met its anti-corruption targets. Russia has just impounded a number of Ukrainian naval ships in the Sea of Azov. This latest Russian aggression was cited by the Commission in reference to the EU's decision to grant the disbursement, though formally it rejected the suggestion that the two were linked. And finally, China has been keen to improve its ability to extradite those suspected of corruption from Western nations, and now, for the first time, has successfully extradited a suspect from an EU state, Bulgaria. Western states have not been overly keen to cooperate with China over ongoing failings in the country's record of democracy, justice and human rights. There's little sense in the West that China follows anything remotely approximating due process. The suspect had been a mid-ranking official in China's Zhejiang province before fleeing in 2005 over corruption charges. After an Interpol red notice was issued, Yao was detained in Bulgaria in October, and Bulgarian courts have now authorised his extradition to China. Whether the suspect will be given legal representation or a fair trial is unclear. That's all for this week, but stay tuned as we have much more on the way.